All right, I'm sorry, guys. Just give me 1 second here.
Are you talking to us?
No, I'm actually eating. I didn't eat today.
No.
I meant Neto.
Yeah. Just a reminder that Maggie will drop off at 5 o'clock. She has a hard stop, but the meeting can continue with Mary Ann and Jim.
All right. All right, let's get started. The Affordable Housing Subcommittee meeting is now commenced. It's January 15th at 4:05. This meeting is being held virtually. Those who are participating remotely, we ask that you mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone, and that you only use the chat function to request to speak. Also, to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and vote, but will be done by way of roll call using audio. First agenda item is the approval of the December minutes.
Which I sent them out earlier today.
I didn't think we met in December. Did we meet? We didn't meet.
Yes, you did. I have a recording.
Okay? Well, I gave a bad update then during the overall commission meeting.
I move to approve.
Here they are. I better look at them. Okay. Oh, I remember now. Okay. Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. They're approved. We're going to do the call to audience last. Are we sure we're going to do that? We want to do that? We have 3 people
In the audience?
who are attending. Yeah. The attendees. Jasmine, Christy, and Patty. Would you guys be okay if we move that to the front, and if they want to speak, they can speak. Otherwise,
Sure.
we don't have to wait. All right. So we're going to do the call to audience. There's a time when any member of the public may address the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. Due to time constraints, individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting laws, commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda, but they can be brought up as a future agenda item. So do any of you wish to speak? Jasmine, Christy, or Patty?
No hands are up at this moment.
Okay. All right, then let's move to the HCD update. So is that Sarah? Is that you?
Yes, that is me, and I have a special guest joining me as well. So I'll just give a couple updates for HCD, and then we're just having PDSD talk about Plan Tucson updates quickly during this time, kind of more of a citywide update. I think for HCD, you know, we've been winning grants left and right, so really awesome. I don't know if the price grant was announced at the full commission meeting, but we did win the price grant from HUD, and we just found out yesterday that we won the HUD Pro Housing Grant, which is the Pathways to Removing Obstacles to Affordable Housing. And so that grant is sort of going to really help us with bolstering kind of the work I've already been doing with affordable housing and helping our partner developers and creating a little bit more funding for gap financing and also add additional staff to supporting affordable housing development in the city. So that's really great news that we got 18 winners were awarded, and we got the full amount of $7 million. So really proud and excited to get that grant. And it's really built, and the reason why it was so successful is it's built on, I believe, the work of this subcommittee, especially with affordable housing and working with developers in the community and you all and your expertise. So really trying to bolster the work that we've been doing for the last 3 years together and just keep growing on it. So really, really stoked on that and happy for all of you guys supporting us as we've sort of developed this affordable housing section of HCD. Jim.
This is the $7 million grant.
Yes.
So I'm just reading, I'm reading an article of a release, that was published, I guess, yesterday by the city on this. Hey, that's a Newport at Rodeo picture, isn't it? So the grant includes zoning reforms, tiny homes, city accountable affordable housing. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, what is that money going to get used for?
Yeah, so we've broken out the money to basically pay for some additional staff and to supplement our existing staff pay. You know, we kind of all get paid from various grants, so it'll kind of go directly to us, the affordable housing team. So, and then we're able to hire, and then it's a joint grant with Pima County as well, and Arches. So some of the money will go to Pima County and a position there, and 2 positions at the city of Tucson. So an additional person in PDSD to support permitting through PDSD's process, additional support in HCD, and then an additional support at Pima County for affordable housing. So additional staff is what some of the money is going towards. The money is going towards gap funding. So we'll put it in our gap funding pot for gap funding for all of our partner projects, like our home money. So it's just to supplement more additional flexible gap funding. Pima County is mimicking our impact fee subsidy program, and launching that with this money. So some of the money will go to the Pima County impact fee subsidy program. And then some money to the community engagement and outreach of code development changes. So Nick Martell with PDSD working through code development, like the community corridor tool and other zoning code changes. The grant is to support those efforts as well. Community engagement functions, et cetera, to help streamline the processes of zoning, which, you know, you guys have all tasked with the city to do. So this will just bolster the opportunity to do that. And then, you know, all the sort of other various grant funding, admin costs, et cetera. So it's really intended to create a little bit of a boost of all the work we've already been doing. It's, you know, not a lot of money, but 7 million will go a long way and really help us out. Marianne?
So is there going to be a budget to let us know, like, what is going to happen with tiny homes and missing middle resources and?
Yes, yeah. As we develop the program, you know, all the budgeting stuff will come out. It's I think one of our things that we're trying to do is like small scale developer support. So as we, you know, the state created the missing housing bill that we're going to have to come into compliance with. So this will help support us in coming into compliance with the middle housing bill. And if we end up creating a small scale developer support, this grant will also help with that. So doing capacity building for small scale developers, you know, getting people up and running to start doing row homes on small scale lots, et cetera. So we also weren't expecting to win the award until next spring or early summer. And so we won it yesterday. I think things are moving very quick for certain reasons. So, you know, still kind of new to me is exactly how it's all going to roll out. But yeah, as we develop the program and launch things, you will all be the first to know and see the budget and be able to sort of see what we're doing and help spread the word.
Will there be any input from the commission on that budget? And by the way, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
I should have said that first.
So
this is a good thing. It's a big deal. And
I think the budget's pretty much set, right? Because that's what we proposed in the grant. So sort of those 3 buckets that I mentioned is kind of what that's going to. I would imagine that the commission will, as you already provide input on the gap financing packages, as those come through, like you'll probably, this group of funding will be included in that as well. But there's not a lot of room for the full budget to be discussed. It's already pretty much established, but definitely we'll get input from the commission. a part of this grant too, that's I think a really important piece is that we've partnered with Arches, which is the group with the U of A. And so we're really focused on also making sure that we learn through this process. So what are the things that we're doing? Is it working? You know, and analyzing like the effects of the changes that we're making, and is it really producing more housing, or is this a good benefit? So it's like a sort of learning lesson through the grant process as well. And you'll be updated on that as we get, I think it's 6 years. That's the full grant span. So, you know, once we start the analysis and then come back, we'll give you guys the updates on sort of the outcomes and the effects of the changes, and help us to then make decisions moving forward. The whole goal is to remove obstacles to building affordable housing.
So
And
will you be able to share, since the grant activities already have the budget done, will you be able to share that with us? Since it's probably public.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll work on, I'm new to this. This is my first grant ever getting awarded. So the more I learn, I'll keep you guys apprised as well.
Okay, if you could send that out, that would be great. Thank you. And
You're
good-
welcome.
Good luck.
Thanks. And so if there's no other questions on pro, then and I will just say real quick, I think another important piece to say is that the reason why we won is because of the work we've done so far. So I don't want that to go unnoticed. This didn't get awarded to cities that are starting at square one and, you know, haven't done anything. We've changed our zoning code to allow accessory dwelling units. We're working on the community corridor tool. We have the Commission on Equitable Housing that's been advocating for all of these things. So it's the work that we've done that really showcased us, and I think got us the full award amount, because we are really doing the work, and this is really just to supplement that and support us moving forward. So thanks to all of you and your hard work. And I get chills thinking about it, because it's not just out of nowhere. It's off of all of our backs in building this community and the housing up for our community.
Well, it's exciting, and you guys have been working your butts off over there. We know that for a fact. So, you know, well deserved. And I'd like, you know, it'd be nice to know what the plan is financially.
Definitely.
Okay.
And one quick thing too, like I'll kind of plug it. I plug this a lot, because it's a new grant that it started last year. This is the second round of funding for it. You know, who knows if it'll exist in the future, but the planning association that I'm a part of, the state chapter here, but it's really been an advocate for this, and it is a planning grant, and it's really intended to look at zoning and the hurdles that are faced, right? Which we all know all too well, when we're constantly bugging PDSD for things. So, you know, it's not just putting money at building housing, but really looking at those systemic issues that are preventing it from getting built where we need it most. So also kind of cool that it's like the first of its kind grant, and that we got on it. And yeah, so anyways, cool. And then I will now pass it to Nick Martell.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Congrats on the grant. That's amazing. We definitely see the work that's being done too, and it's really groundbreaking. So congrats everyone that was a part of that too. Am I able to get permission to share a screen?
Yes, I just made you co-host.
Oh,
You
perfect.
should be able
Thank
to
you.
share.
Sweet. Let's see. Can you all see a screen?
Yes, but can you make it larger though?
Is it let me see. Is it the Plan Tucson screen? I
Yeah.
can't see it.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
If you
Okay,
can
cool.
put it into presentation mode to make it bigger, yeah,
Sweet. For some reason I can't see what I'm sharing, but
that's
if you
cool.
can see it, that's all I care about.
We can see the full first slide, so you're good to go.
Perfect. Okay, great. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just wanted to give you some updates on Plan Tucson and where we've been, where we're going, and then a little bit of extra information about some of the housing parts of Plan Tucson I thought might be a part of good to share with this group. So just a little background of where we are right now. We are currently in phase 3 of Plan Tucson. We're kind of right in that community feedback and working group stage. We went to Planning Commission on December 18th. It was after the Community Corridors tool. So I think everybody's eyes were kind of glazed over after that, that 2-hour presentation. But we did present to Planning Commission. We put out a draft, our first draft of Plan Tucson a few weeks ago, and we're asking the general public to take a look at it, read it, provide some community feedback, and maybe even some working groups so we can refine some of the documentation and then move on to our next draft. So Plan Tucson, with the help of working with the Gordley group, has this draft out. It's broken into 5 different chapters. 1, the introduction. 2, Tucson today. Chapter 3, the values, goals, and policies. That's kind of where the brunt of the document is, a lot of the meat of it. 4, the future growth scenario map and the development guidelines. And then finally, 5 is talking about what's in the future in terms of implementation and what's after adoption. A little brief introduction. So chapter 1 is how to read Plan Tucson, talking about the purpose of the plan, the relationship between plans. So this is kind of note here, relationship between different plans that have already been adopted by the city and how these are interconnected. Some of the state requirements of the general plan and public participation. This is one plan that is required by the state. The guiding principles of the plan, our project team, and then Plan Tucson update on phases. Chapter 2 is more about the history of Tucson, not just since it's been called Tucson, but the history of the land, current conditions, and then talking about neighborhoods. Chapter 3, like I said, is really the bulk of it. This is our values, goals, and policies chapter. This is the shared community values and visions. This was basically from the input that we've gotten from the public so far, and then Plan Tucson goals, which are a large part of this. We narrowed down our goals from about 25 different goals when we first started to 14. We kind of distilled a few of them, combined a few. And a lot of them have to do with anything from equitable communities to housing, quality education, arts, culture, and heritage, water, and basically everything we've heard from the community so far. I just wanted to hone in on chapter 3, goal 5. If you're interested in reading Plan Tucson and providing some feedback, we're still in that feedback stage. This is talking about expanding affordable and accessible housing options. This is kind of talking about where we've been with rent and housing prices, where we are now, and then kind of looking forward to how we're going to address some of these things and some of the goals that we've set for housing affordability. It's important to note that Plan Tucson integrates other plans that have already been adopted by the community and have been worked on by the community. 2 of these that we specifically mention are the Housing Affordability Strategy for Tucson, or the HAST plan, and the People, Communities, and Homes Investment Plan, or PCHIP, because it's planning and development. We always need an acronym for something. Other housing policies that we've heard back from the community include increasing public investment from the development and maintaining of affordable housing types, something Sarah was mentioning, especially with that grant money. Enabling and encouraging mixed income residential and mixed use developments, supporting investment on subsidized housing, providing efficient and effective system of services based on evidence, data, and best practices, encouraging partnerships between city, county, and affordable housing programs, boards and commissions, subcommittees, and then a support to a pathway to home ownership, and then shared equity models such as community land trusts, community equity investments, and much more. So I would encourage anyone, if you haven't read Plan Tucson yet, so especially on this committee, hone in on chapter 3, goal 5 especially. Chapter 4 is talking about future growth, population growth, land use patterns, and urban planning, the role of the future growth scenario map, which I'll touch on in just a second, supporting plans, policies, and state requirements, updating processes and community input summaries, interpretation of the future growth scenario map, the actual future growth scenario map, and then guidelines for development review moving forward. And then finally, chapter 5 touches on the implementation of Plan Tucson. What's next? What's happening after we get adoption? Tools for implementation, the current functional and specific plans, like I mentioned, that go along with Plan Tucson, any near and long-term projects that we're looking at in the future, and then considerations for continuity and longevity of the general plan, because this plan will last a decade and will continue to be updated. This is not the greatest format to share the future growth scenario map, but here's a small version of it. If you'd like to get a PDF version of it, this is also in the Plan Tucson document. So essentially, this map provides the location and general descriptions of the types of development that may be supported in each location. We took these out to public meetings and had members of the public able to pinpoint a little area and see and propose what they want to see from their neighborhood or from their area or another area around town. It depicts a citywide development pattern that can accommodate Tucson's community needs and furthers its values, especially as we're talking about the housing need in the future and the current housing need. Where are those housing units going to go? What are they going to look like? And this map is accompanied by guidelines used in some planning and development review processes. So what we're really looking forward to and what we're looking for from the community is a few extra ways to engage. We're hosting a series of Plan Tucson feedback forums. We've been doing 4 to 5 of those a week for the past several weeks. We've gotten some good feedback. We are asking that you can also host your own meeting. This is a tool that we developed called Meeting in a Box. You can take a small group or a large group that you're involved in, community members, church, friend group, it can be anyone, and you can host your own Plan Tucson meeting, read through some of the things that matter to you and your group, and then provide some feedback. And as always, we're always looking for people to take our online surveys. It's a really good way for us to get some information that will also inform the future draft of this document. So we're moving pretty quickly now, now that we've been doing all this community engagement, all the feedback we're collecting by January 31st. So we have a couple more weeks left of feedback before we start refining and editing and going on the next draft. So that information will inform the next draft of Plan Tucson, which is really big for us. So like I said, the next steps, the 31st is that cutoff date for the community feedback for this round. We do ask for people to host a meeting in a box if you can. We're looking at a second planning commission study. We did our first on December 18th. The second one that we're looking for is February 5th. We're looking to take this to planning commission for a public hearing in March. We are looking to do a call for the election in April. We're running up against some deadlines that we need to meet to get on the ballot. And then we're targeting a mayor and council public hearing and review in May 2025. And then hopefully adoption. And then we're looking forward to this being on the ballot November 2025. So that is all I have by way of presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything.
Sorry, Marianne, your hand is up. I guess I should put my hand.
Go ahead, Marianne.
Go ahead, Maggie, and then I'll go after you.
Nicholas, can you share your presentation and also any links to the surveys and any other, good information that we would need?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Yeah, I'll send you the links to the website, surveys, and this presentation.
Thank you.
Marianne.
Okay, Maggie, the link to the presentation is it's in our chat.
Thanks.
So Jim and Nicholas, we have provided a goal in our planning from the Mayor's Commission that was submitted to the city council, I hope, in the form of a letter of trying to reach 50,000 units, additional 50,000 units.
15,000
Sorry, 15,000 units by 2025.
by 2030.
Sorry, I'm.
We'll take them any year.
Yeah, yeah. So we wanted, is there a place that recommendation can fit into this this planning document, you know, as recommended from the Mayor's Commission on affordable housing and equitable development?
I would say yes. That is something that we would definitely love to hear in terms of a public comment. If you have some specifics, I know, so Plan Tucson's not overly specific in terms of numbers, although there are things associated with Plan Tucson that we would definitely love to hear that. So if you could write that, you can either send me an email, you could do an online survey. Any of that information would be very helpful.
Jim, do you have a copy of that letter that you can send to Nick?
Yes.
Okay. So
Actually, I don't think I ever got the final version. Do you,
Ernesto,
Neto, do you have the final version that we put together?
I have to look for it tomorrow.
Okay. I don't know that I ever saw it. But Nick, I can send you the draft. Do you want to just put in the comments what your email is?
Yes.
so there's a few recommendations in there that went before the council that I believe they accepted. That you might want to include somewhere in this whole process.
Okay. Yeah, that's great feedback. If you share that with me, I'm happy to bring that up to the Plan Tucson team.
Oops.
Ernesto, when you get that letter, could you send it out to all of us, please?
Sure.
So once again, another exciting product from the city of Tucson, and I think this in my mind is like, I think something that I don't know, for the last 10-15 years, the coming together of the departments and the production of something that all of the departments are involved in and are supporting, I believe, is a really big, good step for the city of Tucson. So, I applaud all of this and, happy to support it. And I'll be looking at, the chapter 3, which with regards to housing really starts on page 90 so Jim and Maggie.
Right. Thank you, Marianne. I appreciate that. And yeah, we've gotten so much support from the community and other departments, and it's been very helpful, but appreciate that.
Hey, Nick, can you, I know I got an email on it and I had conflicts with the next 2 feedback sessions, but for everybody else's benefit, maybe put those in the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to send all this information to Rachel, and Rachel will send it all to you.
Okay. I just emailed you the affordable housing goal document.
Okay. Let's see. I haven't gotten it yet, but it might be a little slow.
And just for the members who are attending online, space HCD put in the chat plantucson.org/get involved. So that's, that's the website that'll take you to everything Plan Tucson for the members of the public joining as well.
All right. Any other questions for me? If you have anything else that comes up later on, feel free to email me. And I'm happy to share that with the Plan Tucson team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And that's
Thank you.
so you can move on the agenda.
That's it for you, Sarah? I better find the agenda.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I see Everin on the call, Sonmas, and I have no idea who you are, so I was wondering if you would introduce yourself.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's like
Thanks,
an HCD
Marianne.
update. Sorry, I should have thought about that. We've got so much going on. I just see her face and think it's normal. So one of the great things is that we got to hire 2 additional staff to support the development arm at the city. And so I'll let Everin introduce herself, but she's one of 2 new staff that we hired supporting El Pueblo housing development and supporting developers as well. So Everin, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks, Marianne. I am the HCD update. So yeah, I'm Evren. I started sort of mid-September, so it's been a little over 3 months at the city and at HCD. And I kind of come from a transportation advocacy background. I was with Living Streets Alliance for about 12 years. You may be familiar with the organization, or at least Cyclovia, however you prefer to say it. And so I'm newer to housing and also brand new to the city, as in the government, not city. I've been in Tucson for 20 years. I'm originally from Turkey. And yeah, I'll be attending the subcommittee meetings along with Sarah for a while, and then we'll see how we divvy the responsibilities among ourselves. We might tag team. I may end up sort of being the point person eventually, but just mainly here to get to know you all and hear about all the great work you're doing for the time being as I get more acclimated. So thanks so much. Yeah, nice meeting all of you.
Welcome aboard.
Congratulations and welcome, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We ready to move on to agenda item 3? Prop 414. I'm not sure who's leading this discussion.
That's me.
That's going to be you, Allison?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks for letting me drop in on your subcommittee meeting. I'll share my screen, but I didn't know if you had any more intro, Jim.
Well, there's some things I would like to say, but we'll go do your thing and then I'll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. Can you see my screen okay? Am I sharing my screen?
No.
Mhm.
Oh, wait. I've done this before, I swear.
There you go.
Now do you see my screen? Okay, great. So just as kind of a reminder, we had a presentation from Lane Mandel from the city manager's office in December at the full commission meeting. She kind of went over the whole proposition, the different buckets, and there were some questions about kind of some of the specifics around the housing items that are in the proposition. So at HCD, we've been doing some work to kind of pull some more information together and get and kind of follow up on that item and get some of those questions answered. I'm sure this presentation might create more questions, but that's kind of why we're here today. And the full commission meetings have been so jam-packed that we decided to try to do these in the smaller commission meetings. And I think that's great because that means kind of a smaller group you can get your questions answered. So before I start, want to just kind of clarify, we got some clarification from the city attorney's office today in terms of, what are we asking from the commission? And really what we're trying to do is educate you all. I think there would be a role for you if Proposition 414 were to pass. And so want to make sure you know what that is and have a chance to ask any questions you have, make sure you understand what's in it. So right, kind of general rule as a commission of the city, the commission itself can't take a position for or against the ballot measure. And we can't discuss your individual positions if you are for or against the proposition in a commission meeting. What you can do is ask staff questions, seek clarity, and kind of provide and share any information that you have that is neutral and not advocacy. But then as individuals outside of this commission meeting, just as any other resident of the city of Tucson, you are able to take a position on the ballot measure, and would love for you to share information as that you have available to you if you're asked. Does that make sense? Any questions there? And so just a little bit of big picture information. I think in general, if you have any questions, want to see kind of everything that's currently in the proposition, the website is tucsonaz.gov/prop 414. Today, right, there's kind of 5 buckets that Lane presented on today. I'm mostly going to focus on the affordable housing and shelter bucket, as well as a little bit of the neighborhood and community resilience area. Obviously, that's kind of more of HCD's purview, and more of the commission's purview. So all of the kind of dollar estimates that you'll see are based on an estimated $80 million per year tax income. That we obviously can't predict the future. So any variances there will be allocated proportionately if it were to pass. And then we have some information in kind of each of the program areas about, like approximate unit numbers that could be developed with each kind of bucket of funding. And those are obviously kind of big ballpark guesses based on, programs that we currently have going, and if we were to be able to expand those programs. So that's what that means. And then again, if Proposition 414 is approved by voters, there will be a role for CEHD, but there will be a larger Safe and Vibrant City Tax Oversight Commission of community members to oversee the whole thing. So I do throughout the slides kind of point out in each of the projects where there are priorities specifically related to things that we know that the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development is interested in. So I specifically sort of call out with these icons where CEHD has a role. And then I know we've been talking a lot about the Prosperity Initiative, and there are elements in the proposition that kind of directly advance some of those policy priorities. And then we all love the housing affordability strategy for Tucson on CEHD, and the pieces in the housing element kind of all advance goals of the housing affordability strategy. So I'll just start with the Prosperity Initiative. May have been a bit of time since you last kind of saw those policies, but if you remember, there's 13 policies that Mayor and Council adopted as part of the Prosperity Initiative in January of 2024. So these 13 policies are listed here, and kind of tried to bucket them under housing, health, education, and jobs. And then there's 3 cross-policy strategies that were also included. That the idea with those cross-policy strategies are really that those pieces can and should be infused across those 13 policies. They were kind of more bigger picture than just one policy. So the check marks here kind of indicate where which Prosperity Initiative policies are addressed kind of through actions and projects in the Prop 414 project. So definitely housing mobility and housing stability funding. There's funding for kind of neighborhood quality, tree planting, our urban forestry program. There is funding to continue for quality early childcare and education. There are a couple different workforce development funding buckets. Small businesses would be supported through some of our community-based violence intervention programming, through the workforce development programming. And then of the cross-policy strategies, like I mentioned, there is funding throughout, both in housing and and some of the urban forestry programs and things like that to support climate resilience and environmental justice. And then there's, whole categories of funding about preventing and reducing crime. And what we really saw in the Prosperity Initiative is that's a huge part of promoting prosperity within our community. So under the affordable housing and shelter bucket, kind of if you add everything together, that the estimate is that it would generate about $14 million per year for that bucket, which over the course of 10 years would be $140 million. And so forgive my rough math, but kind of adding up very rough estimates for the different buckets, as like a mid-range guess, is about 7,000 units of affordable housing that could be developed or preserved with the funding that is included in Prop 414, kind of above and beyond funding that we currently have. And you'll see how I sort of got to that math as we go along. And feel free to just ask questions as we go, if that's more comfortable for you guys. But I'm going to start with the first project under the affordable housing and shelter bucket, which is gap financing pool. So we estimate about $2 million a year or $20 million total. And we currently have a gap financing program that funding currently is through home funding, kind of around $2 million a year. And that helps us support 2 to 3 LIHTC developments, roughly 75 units each. This funding would go into the city's housing trust fund. It would accumulate over time, and specifically CHD, in the same way that they've been involved in our other gap financing, would help us recommend and review projects. So kind of, again, big picture estimates, we think this could help support an additional 200 to 300 units per year. Go ahead, Jim.
So just to be clear, this is not going to replace home funds. This is in addition to.
Correct. This would be in addition to. I think one of the things that is important to keep in mind is, as we've seen at the federal level, some of the entitlement funds we have seen on the chopping block in recent years, not just thinking about the new administration. So definitely kind of concerned about being able to continue that funding. But if we were to get both pots of money, we would have funding under each of those. So project that out over 10 years, that's 2,000 to 3,000 units. And just keep in mind, that's really broadly. With this gap financing pool, we'd be able to be a little bit more flexible. So potentially kind of some of the more alternative projects that the commission has been talking about, things like non-LIHTC projects, things like small scale development, missing middle and home ownership, we could figure out how to incorporate into the gap financing pool and have a little bit more flexibility than federal funds allow. And moving on. Impact fee waiver pool, again, this is a current program, but this would provide expanded and more secure and certain funding. So currently, we've had allocated about $500,000 per year from the general fund, but that's subject to budget availability. In the past year, we've supported about 230 units. So with $750,000 a year, we'd likely, again, very rough math based on those numbers, support an additional 110 units per year. Project that out. These are the projects that we supported in the past year. So for the next 3 projects, we included a definition of resilience in housing. So we talk about resilience a lot, and what does that mean? Is broadly, right, the ability to adapt to change positively, recover from difficulties, and persist in facing challenges. And so what we think when we think about resilience in housing, that can be pretty broad. We talk about climate resiliency and the ability to withstand extreme weather. Is our air conditioning going to go out because we live in an old home? That's one, but also resilience to things like rising housing prices or, sudden maintenance needs in your home. So there's kind of a broad spectrum of things that we think about in this proposition when we're talking about housing resilience. So the first project under this resiliency bucket is city-owned housing stock, about $2 million a year. So the city owns and operates, as you all know, about 2,000 units of housing for folks with extremely low incomes. So it's both public housing and our El Portal affordable housing portfolio. And this would help us make kind of repairs, renovations, HVAC, solar, water efficiency improvements to those units. One of the big things here is that we currently use kind of PHA and CDBG HUD funding for these improvements now, and they are absolutely not keeping pace with the maintenance needs that we have. So really wanting to make investments in these properties and ensure that this affordable housing for folks with extremely low incomes is quality and resilient. So we currently serve over 3,000 people in our city-owned housing. And speaking of extremely low income, that's a median income of over $12,000 a year. We think we would be able to update about 100 units on average per year, so about 1,000 units over the course of the program. But we have yeah, go ahead.
Those are all the single family housing units that the city owns?
We have, what was it? We have about 500 scattered site single family public housing units there, but the 2,000 units is across our portfolio. So a lot of those are also multifamily, or they're smaller apartment complexes and things like that as well. So this includes all of those. But I think you're also maybe speaking a little bit to variability there. So we're just sort of in this estimate saying $20,000 a unit, but some need more than that and some need less than that to kind of be brought up to much better efficiency standards and things like that. Moving on. Resiliency for homeowners. So this is improvements to owner-occupied housing for low and moderate income households. Again, some of those same improvements, but investing in current homeowners who need some help kind of keeping their homes updated. Currently, we do have funding for through this program through CDBG, through HUD, Community Development Block Grant. But again, that future funding is uncertain and the exact levels are unknown. So this would add to that. So we think with kind of our current funding that we provide to homes, we'd be able to do 40 to 60 plus homes per year. And so 400, 600 plus homes in 10 years. Resiliency for renters. So this is a program that does not currently exist in Tucson that we've kind of been dreaming about for a little bit of time. But how do we kind of preserve and enhance existing affordable or workforce rental housing in our community? Again, some of the same improvements, but it's not a program that we've currently been offering. They have a similar program in Phoenix to what we're thinking about. This would include a competitive process that we'd like to bring the commission in on. We would require a financial participation agreement. And then we would like for those things to include things like affordability conditions and rent cap, not wanting people to get those improvements and then spike up the rent. So that would be worked through with the commission. We think kind of based on an average of $25,000 per unit, that would get us 40 units per year or 400 units over 10 years. Down payment assistance, again, a program that we currently have through our federal home funds, with the same caveat of that funding being unsure in the future. But it offers low and moderate income families a path to home ownership. We collaborate on this program with a number of community partners that do housing counseling and things like that. It is absolutely a wealth building opportunity in our community, and these funds will accumulate year after year so that we can kind of keep giving out that assistance. And so we think overall we'd be able to provide, based on the what we have been able to give out this past year, assistance to about 60 plus homeowners. Asset repositioning. So this is kind of a little bit more specifically looking at some of our single family public housing units that we would like to transition to affordable home ownership. So we would be working with the city and partners we first need to renovate and modernize those so that they can also be quality housing opportunities. This is not a program that we have current funding for. We think we could do about 10 homes per year and about 100 homes total. Yes.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
So is this going to be like a land trust or something where it's permanent affordability, even though there's ownership, or what happens once somebody buys those units? Is it?
I think that
switch
would be one of the options available through this program. Moving on. Moving a little bit more into our low barrier shelter development. So we'll also be giving this presentation to our Housing First subcommittee. We know there's a real need for low barrier shelters in the community, places where people can take their pets, stay with their partners, store their belongings. And we, through our Housing First program, have really been able to scale up both and run those shelters. And then we've also purchased shelters and are, working with partners like OPCS and Pima County to actually run those shelters. A lot of that work is done through time limited grants right now. We used kind of ARPA enabled funds to be able to do some of that work in the past few years. This would provide more of a long-term funding source for that successful program. That program serves about 250 people per year in our low barrier shelter in Housing First, and kind of as an outcome, 70% of those folks enter permanent housing. So again, more long-term funding and dedicated funding for our Housing First program. They provide a number of services in our community and have really scaled up in the past few years. Some of the services are the homeless protocol. They do encampment assessments. They do street outreach. We have a mobile shower program. They engage volunteers in all of this work, emergency shelter support, housing navigation, and supportive housing. And they use current funding and leverage a lot more grant funding and volunteer hours. Again, all of that work is being done through mostly time limited grants. And so we want a longer term funding source to actually like expand the work that they've been doing. Across all of their programs, they serve about 1,300 individuals currently. Again, with 70% of those folks maintaining permanent housing. So we also included, this is not HCD particularly, but we work really closely with community safety, health and wellness and their care coordinators and navigators. So they provide referrals to about 2,700 people per year. 60% of those referrals are for housing and shelter services. They do more close kind of case management and care coordination for about 250 individuals for up to 90 days. And they also help with disbursement of eviction prevention funds, housing moving costs, and utility assistance and this is kind of to date, they serve about 150 individuals per year. Again, it's based on time limited funding right now. Okay. I'm gonna keep going because I only have one in the neighborhood and community resiliency bucket, which so I talked I talked at the beginning how there are things like workforce development funding, early childhood education funding. I'm not talking about those things at the moment, but just note that those are in this bucket that would generate about $13.4 million per year. So the thing that is near and dear to my heart as well is the Thrive Zone work. So this about $1 million per year would go towards the continuing the Thrive Zone work that HCD has been doing for the past few years. Folks might recall Thrive in the O5, where we have the $50 million Choice Neighborhoods grant. And we're just launching kind of a new planning grant effort in the 29th Street Thrive Zone. The idea there is really to engage local residents and figure out together kind of how do we want to transform this community and support communities that have previously been disinvested in. These are very kind of time limited grant opportunities. The HUD Choice Neighborhoods program has been amazing. And it sort of makes us focus on the grant opportunities rather than necessarily being able to be in this community for a longer period of time. So flexible funding here would allow us to kind of braid funding sources. I've many times had to kind of navigate how do we do this thing that the community wants to do with the federal funding that we have. And so having the opportunity to have some more flexible funds would really help address the things that the community is telling us that they want to see. And if you recall, kind of the Choice and Thrive Zone model looks pretty holistically across a neighborhood. We look at services for people around health, income, and employment and education. We really want to build in affordability and mixed income housing into that neighborhood and support kind of the long-term affordability. And then we identify neighborhood investments, things like parks and transportation, to really kind of create a more holistic approach to how we plan in a disinvested neighborhood. So that would generate about $10 million total for that program. And there I will stop and answer any questions or try to answer any questions and take others back that I can share updates with later.
Okay, I've got a couple questions if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the website, you went through A1 through A10. There's A11, 12, 13, 14. Are those still included, or did you just didn't in lieu of time, you didn't want to go through all that?
Yeah, and so those are this is a good question. I also asked that question. So I went through the ones that like HCD sort of very specifically works on and will be involved in and that are kind of more in the purview of the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. But the courts program, I can absolutely ask the staff there to come and talk about those if that would be helpful. But
I was
they
just
are
curious.
included. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious if they're still included. Okay.
Yeah.
So A8 through A10, one of the things that you said is that they've got limited funding right now and we're putting in a more permanent source. But this is also kind of a limited time thing. And this is one of the, when I've talked with people about this proposition, that's one of the points of feedback is the city is putting in permanent programs on something that will expire in 10 years. What's the best response to that?
I would never say that my responses are the best responses, but I think that time limited funding right now, we're talking like 2 years, right? We're talking about a funding cliff in 2026. And so an additional 10 years gives us that opportunity to both plan for sustainability in a way that does not sort of limit our ability to continue to deliver services in kind of the short and medium term.
Yeah. So Maggie or Marianne, do either of you guys have a comment or question for my next piece? Because it's going to rat holes for a minute.
Yeah, I do, but this is kind of outside of Prop 414. So continue with yours, Jim, and then I'll go.
Maggie?
No, I have no questions and I'm gonna have to go. So thank you.
Okay.
Great
Well,
presentation.
the mayor called me today. And are you aware of that, Allison?
No.
Oh, she called me and we talked for about 20 minutes about Prop 414. She asked me to write an op-ed in the paper talking about affordable housing and this proposition, which I can do, but I need help with.
I just want to be really careful, Jim, as we're talking to make sure we're not talking about individual positions on this meeting.
Okay.
I think again, this is all informational, so you are welcome to take any of the information here to develop your individual opinion.
She called to ask.
Yeah.
And my feedback to her was, I'm gonna need help. So,
Also, I think, Allison, didn't you say that the commission can't take a stance either? So how would Jim write that op-ed? Basically,
well, it wouldn't be if I do it, it won't be as a commissioner, it'll be as
your
an
private.
affordable housing advocate.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I'll see y'all later. Thanks so much.
Okay, Maggie.
Bye.
All right, well, Allison, maybe you or Sarah or Ann or something can help me, let's talk offline.
We can provide information.
Okay, that's what I need. I want factual. I want to make sure that I get all the facts straight. So I appreciate you going through this. This is going to be a really, really challenging proposition. It's one of the things I'm learning about it is there's a lot of very impassioned people on both sides. And I really have no idea. And because it's a special election, voter turnout's probably going to be super low. And I really have no idea how it's going to turn out. But I guess one question I have for you guys is, if it fails, what does that mean to HCD?
I think we are in the position where we are right now, which is, we have the funding that we have, and we'll continue to work on the projects that we have. And I think also we would have to figure that out after the results of the proposition.
Well, I guess my thoughts on that is, if it fails, I don't think means we should throw in the towel and give up. I think I mentioned this at the overall commission meeting, is the county is pushing back on us about a bond initiative. And I'm not really sure from a timing perspective that a bond initiative is going to really work right now anyways. So, this just from the perspective of funding the city's housing trust fund, I think this is a good thing, because those dollars get leveraged, 20x in terms of creating housing, and a lot of that money ends up coming back to the city. Where am I going with this? I guess what I'm trying to say is, if it fails, I think there will be an opportunity to reboot and try again. And, maybe some of the feedback that I've heard is the process wasn't as inclusive as a lot of the other processes that the city has in terms of getting feedback. And I think if they take another crack at it, there'll be a higher likelihood of passing. So that's just my 2 cents. Because I don't think anybody in general has a problem with the things that are on the proposition. Everybody wants a safer community. Everybody wants affordable housing. Everybody, wants to support these things. So I do think that there's going to be another bite at the apple if this one doesn't get through.
I just have a quick question. Allison, are you going to be able to share that presentation with us? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we'll have that. And then, just for the sake of not doing anything we're not supposed to do in the commission, we have learned a lot. And if there's any specific questions, I think we're all able to take, those and help get those to you, and we'll keep working through this. And, I think if we can just I know for staff, that presentation is really helpful, because having the estimated amounts will be really helpful. And so, yeah, I think if we could get that, and then, you know, if there's any specific questions that you all have as you kind of go home and crunch on this, and then reach out to us and we'll work through all those details.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys. Good
Allison.
presentation. Good presentation, Allison. We always appreciate you.
Okay,
Appreciate you guys.
so Allison, on the home funding and CDBG and HUD, I just wanna ask if in the next this meeting, this subcommittee or the bigger meeting, what is the city doing regarding lobbying the new administration for protecting home CDBG and HUD? I really want to know about that, because sitting on the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco's advisory committee, I know that we've been talking about how to educate Senate and Congress people regarding the importance of those funds in terms of leveraging tax credits and other dollars that'll build the housing that these congressional and Senate officials seem to support. And so it's really important that Arizona, or the city in Arizona, is doing something similar, taking what it is that they do like and where HUD money provides the leverages in these capital stacks. So I'd like to just hear more in the next, hopefully maybe the bigger CEHD meeting, about what the city is going to be doing regarding lobbying for the protection of those resources.
Sure. So yeah, I think so we do have a director of federal and state relations, that's Andres Cano, and we also have a separate lobbying firm that works with Andres and city staff and mayor and council. So I think actually what would be best is I know at the larger commission, trying to have a conversation with the facilitators about what are the things that we want to focus on. And so if that's one of the things that the commission wants to focus on, I'm sure we could ask Andres and that lobbying firm to come and talk about, what's on the state and federal legislative agendas and what are we really focusing on. I feel like they would be much more well equipped.
So maybe it's not the larger meeting, it's this subcommittee then. And then we can take it as the subcommittee to the larger meeting. But I really want to know what the plan is by the city of Tucson and HCD to hit the ground running on this one.
Thanks, Marianne.
All right. Are we good to move to agenda item 4? I think we only have about 15 minutes left. So, and my agenda item is not going to take that long. Can I share my screen?
Yes, let me make you a co-host
Thank you.
so I can find you. All right. You should have it.
All right. Okay. You guys see the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I went through this, I think, a few meetings ago. And just as a point of background, we're building a 300 unit affordable housing project in Casa Grande. The developer on that project has the exact same buildings going up right now outside of Dallas. It started maybe 2 months before our project. And the feedback that I got from him was that the project in Texas cost roughly 20% less than it did in Casa Grande. So, I started looking into why is it so much more expensive to build here than in Texas. And there's a lot of reasons behind it. And some of them are things we can't change. So for example, the transportation costs are a little bit less in Texas than they are here. A little bit more labor availability out there. So labor costs might be a little less. Yeah, I got feedback from a framer that it costs less to frame a building out there because OSHA is not as stringent. They allow people to walk walls when you're rolling trusses as opposed to working from below, so they can work faster and more efficiently, but it's not as safe. So, there's things like that that affect the costs that we're not gonna do anything. So but what I wanted to do was, I'd heard that governmental fees and related costs made up to 50% of the cost of a project. So I said, well, I want to see if that's really the case. I want to try to prove that case and if it's true or not. So I called a lot of different developers and I kind of talked about, all the different costs and things that have to be done to get a new project out of the ground. And so basically what we have here, these are the different items. This is who controls the cost, average cost per unit. And then if you're building a 250 unit project, what's the extended cost for that project, with some comments. So they're broken up into kind of, I think, 6 categories. Governmental and utility fees, taxes, code requirements, affordable housing related costs, call it other soft costs, and then potential future costs. And I don't want to go through this whole thing again because we've already gone through it once, but there's one thing to me that has kind of jumped to the top of the list in terms of low-hanging fruit, and that's the sales tax item. And the sales tax, the way sales tax is calculated for projects is it's 65% of the TPT rate, the transaction privilege tax rate. And this law was put into effect 40 or 50 years ago. And basically the thought behind it was that materials make up roughly 65% of the project and labor makes up 35%. And so you don't charge sales tax on labor or equipment, just materials. And so they came up with this 65% as a way of simplifying the sales tax code. And then when subcontractors purchase materials, they purchase them tax-free, and the tax is charged by the general contractor. And so we write a check every month to the state, the counties, and the cities that we're working in. So there's 2 components to this that I'd like to discuss, and I'm going to start advocating for this at the state level. So the first item is the 65% is no longer a good estimate of the material cost. Material cost on a project is typically between 30 to 35%, which means if probably 2/3 of the states in the country don't do it this way. They have the subcontractors pay sales tax on the materials at the time of purchase. And then the GC contract is basically tax-free. For us, we have to charge sales tax on the insurance, on all the equipment, all the labor, markups, everything. And so the reality is if we were to go back to either just charging sales tax at the point of purchase, it would probably reduce the sales tax burden on construction projects by half. Which this is a huge line item. If you look at on a per unit basis, it's about $15,000 per unit just in sales tax. And this is assuming an average cost of about $270,000 per unit. Over the course of a project, it's $3.8 million. So that's one component that would affect not only affordable housing, it would affect all levels of housing, at market rate, high-end, luxury, workforce housing, everybody. So that's the first component. So the second component is there's a House bill right now at the state level that is attempting to change the state just the state component, which is at $9,800, to waive that sales tax on affordable housing projects for age restricted for seniors for LIHTC. So there is a law in the books right now. It was set up for HUD 202s that basically says the state of Arizona does not charge sales tax on HUD 202s. That's been in place for the last 20 years. And what they're trying to do is expand that so that it's all senior housing projects that are affordable. And, you know, the question that I asked is, why are we limiting it to senior housing projects? If this could be waived for all affordable housing projects, that would have an enormous impact on companies' ability to get deals done. Because right now, well, I mean, previously, the last couple of years, the state had $150 million in the housing trust fund. That got wiped this last year with all the budget issues that the state has. And one of the issues with the state housing trust fund is if there's a for-profit that takes money from the housing trust fund, it's considered a gift to the project, and immediately 40% of that goes back to pay taxes on that gift. So if you get $1 million, it really only has a net benefit of the project to about $600,000. And there's a lot of big projects that got $3 or $4 or $5 million this last year. By waiving the sales tax requirement, that is cutting a cost. So there are no tax implications. It just reduces the cost. It reduces the regulation on getting new affordable housing projects out of the ground. So I am planning to present this to the Affordable Housing Commission, the Arizona Housing Coalition. They have a legislative group that's going to meet in a couple of weeks. I'm in the process of hitting up a lot of the members of that group. So I'm going to be talking to Owen Metz from Dominion and Brian Swanton from Gorman tomorrow to talk to them, make sure I've kind of got them on board with this. So I'm hoping to get the Housing Coalition behind it, at which point we're going to probably start talking to some legislators. But I think that of all the things and all the costs and all the fees on a project, if the state would allow waivers, like right now, if the city of Tucson does a waiver, they collect the money and then they have to pay it back from the general fund. If they would allow waivers on things like the impact fees, they would allow city to provide waivers on affordable housing projects and allow the state to provide waivers on the sales tax. I think that would have a huge benefit, and it's a revenue not collected, which is, I think, a little bit different than having to outlay the cash. Because, I don't know that you count on always getting all that revenue. Anyways, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I just wanted to kind of get feedback from this group before. So I'm talking to a lot of people about this right now. But I think it will have a huge impact on new affordable housing projects across the state, not just here. Marianne?
Yeah, I think this is the, good luck, especially, with the budget crisis. You're going to get some pushback, I think, just on that topic all by itself. So, making your point is important. And on the cost where you compared between Texas and here, is it also a rural versus urban issue? Like, was the Texas a rural project as well?
No, it was outside of Texas. It was outside of Dallas. It
So
was in the
I don't know
suburbs
if,
of Dallas.
yeah, if the fact that Casa Grande, there's a lot of traveling, like you said, transportation costs, but I'm also wondering if things are more expensive because of where it's located. That's all. But
There's probably some of that, but we can't change that.
yeah, I
Me.
understand that.
Yeah.
But the costs for, some of the actual fees for electric and things like that might be because it's in a rural area. That's all I got.
Yeah.
And
Okay, that's it.
keep us, let us know what the coalition says.
Well, the initial feedback I got from the coalition was they are working hard to reinstate the state housing trust fund. And so Nicole Newhouse, her initial knee-jerk reaction was, if I put this up also, they may say yes to this and no to the state housing trust fund, and that was more important to her. Frankly, I think this would have a much bigger impact than the state housing trust fund. I'm sorry, not the housing trust and the state low-income housing tax credit. Not the housing trust,
Okay.
the state
Yeah, that's
low-income housing tax credit. So there's typically, what, 2 or 3 projects a year awarded on the state low-income housing tax credit. And the way that is currently, was written is very limiting in terms of what developers can do. There are some aspects of that limit the unit count. So you can't ask for more than double, so that you can only get $1 million of the state low-income housing tax credit dollars. And there's a rule that you can't get more than double that in federal tax credits. So that means you're limited to $2 million in federal low-income housing tax credits. You have to go for a lower affordability. So instead of going for 80% AMI, I think you're at 54% AMI, because it's a competitive process. So the rents are lower, and you can't get a property tax waiver on state low-income housing tax credits. So when you add those 3 things together, in some cases, it's almost better just to go after the higher bond allocation, get the 4% federal tax credits. So also the big problem right now with the state tax credit is you have to stack it with the 4% tax credits. And the state it was oversubscribed this year by $1 billion. So they did the drawing last week for the bond cap. And basically there were, I think, 27 or 29 projects that were submitted. They chose 9. And the way they chose them is they wrote the project names on a piece of paper, put them into a box, and drew them at random. That's how they chose them. It was a completely random process. And they have a requirement now as part of that bond allocation is they have to be in the ground within 6 months. So the projects basically have to be pretty far along in the design process to hit that time frame. And so from a timing perspective, I don't know how the state low-income housing tax credit is going to work, because you have to get that first, but then you can't use it until you get 4% tax credits, which there's no guarantee of doing. So I think there's some pretty serious issues right now with the state low-income housing tax credit. And that's why I think this would be a better solution, because it would benefit every affordable housing project. And the deals are tough right now. They're really, really tough to get out of the ground, especially in Tucson. Tucson has it tougher than the rest of the state because our area median incomes are lower and our costs are higher. And so we've talked about this many times before, but it's really, really tough to make deals work here. So,
Okay, keep us posted.
yeah. All right, that's it. That's all I have. So, Sarah, Allison, Megan, any of you guys have comments, thoughts on that? Nato? Okay. Next meeting is February 19th. And our next full commission meeting is January 6th. We've got the Mary Ann's suggestion of the home funds and CBDG as an agenda item. If there's other agenda items, let's email them, but without objection, we are adjourned.
So, who's
You
gonna
object.
send those
Hang on.
items?
Send those items.
Ernesto, what are you doing?
I need to say something, but you go ahead
Oh,
first.
no, go ahead.
Jim, regarding your next meeting, at the December meeting, the committee discussed to and agreed to meet on the second Thursdays of the month, according to the recording.
Right.
So that would be the
Um,
13th.
Because you have conflicts, you have, well, many of you have conflicts for Wednesdays and Tuesdays.
Yeah. I think I'm okay with this next meeting. And Maggie's no longer here. Does
On the
the
13th?
19th work for you, Mary Ann?
Um, Yeah,
All right, let's go ahead and keep that meeting.
Okay,
It is
we'll do.
for now.
and then you said January 6th for the next full meeting, but I think you mean February 6th?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what I meant.
Neto, will you send out that invitation?
For the February 6th meeting?
Yeah,
Yes, and in fact, I have to put it on the calendar for the full year.
okay.
So thank you for the reminder. Yes. That's it for
And
calendar.
then the agenda items for the full meeting on the 6th. Neto, do you have those or do you
Not-
want us to email you?
Agenda items for the full commission meeting, February 6th, will be coming out, not this week, but next week, I believe.
So we should send those items to you?
Yeah,
We-
copy the chair and vice chair also,
Yeah, I
Mary
will.
Ann.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right,
That's
everybody, so can you stop the recording for a second?
Hang
Tell a
on.
funny story.
Okay, hang on. So are you adjourning the meeting?
The meeting's adjourned.